It's a little bit late in the week, but let's still answer some questions from our mailbag next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on Odyssey and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this podcast, well, this podcast, unlike this week, is usually Monday through Friday, 5 episodes a week, usually come out in the evening time after the games, but can fluctuate a little bit depending on the schedule. And, of course, technology problems because I haven't had my laptop all week. That's going to change on Monday. I'll have everything back to normal, the camera, the audio quality, so that's not going to be too much of an issue, and hopefully in a much better mood than maybe I am today after last night's game. I get it. It was close, exciting at the very end, but blowing a one-run lead and giving up 9 in one inning, not going to sit too good, I think, with a lot of people, even though they had an unbelievable Herculean effort in the 9th inning to even make that interesting. So that is one aspect of this team that never goes away, and hopefully this podcast never goes away. As for myself, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I do some hosting, co-hosting, and some producing over there. Also, we'll be doing some Chiefs post-game coming up as the season begins. So I'll be taking over for my good buddy Josh Briscoe. So if you like Chiefs stuff and you're a Royals fan right now, well, I won't be going away during the football season or when this ends because we'll just go down to 3 episodes a week here. And then I'll also be doing post-game for the Kansas City Chiefs. So lots going on here locally, lots going on in the sports world, at least for myself. And even though this week has been a little bit chaotic and wild with the technology problems, using a different laptop, going to the Apple Store to get it repaired, hoping everything's going to be ironed out by Monday morning. Again, questions and comments can always be left to me at JohnnyJ_15, especially on days like today. Or Friday, I should say, for a Mailbag Friday, but it's more of a Mailbag Saturday today. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game coming up this afternoon. If you want to see a potential bounce back, maybe the Royals wash away their bullpen woes today, I suggest you do so over at Game Time. They give you the best possible deals. I used Game Time last night when going to the game. Was a lot of fun for, I would say, 7 innings. And then the final 2 innings, they did get pretty crazy, but I can't say I was enjoying it too much in that 9-run explosion for the San Diego Padres. Don't want to waste any more time. We have 30-plus questions to get into. I want to answer every single one of them. So let's start it off with Go Chiefs Go. He said, would Jorge Lopez and Daniel Lynch bolster this bullpen? JJ just Cade on all the offseason bullpen signings, unfortunately. I don't think we need to completely overreact to all the signings being poor. I think right now it's easy to jump on they're all terrible. I mean, John Schreiber was an excellent pickup until it feels like his last 2 outings or 3 outings in which he got shelled in Tampa and he got shelled last night. MacArthur has not been good, and even though he wasn't an offseason signing, he was an acquisition last year. Chris Stratton, again, prisoner of the moment. You've heard me say that all week long. I do just think this bullpen's streaky, but they do need reinforcements. That's what I'm going to jump on today. They need help. I'm not going to sit by and say, oh, they're just going to be streaky all year. To get to the playoffs, they have to have 2 more guys in this bullpen. I don't think it's going to be Jorge Lopez and Daniel Lynch. They need legitimate power in that bullpen. Those 2 guys are not going to be the reinforcements that you're thinking they are. I mean, this is also goes back to last night. It's 1 outing, but Will Klein comes in last night in a 4-run game and just unravels as well. He was very hittable last night. And that's why you can't always look to Omaha as just the savior. Oh, they're pitching well in AAA or hitting well in AAA. They're going to absolutely tear it up at the big league level. Again, 1 outing is 1 outing, but the Royals need major league help. They need to make acquisitions and trades that can help the back end of this bullpen because right now it's in shambles right now. It's been very, very poor over the last week or so. This one comes from Gordon. More important trade, outfield bat or relief pitching? I think relief pitching. I used to think it was outfield, but I kind of feel like when this team plays well, the bottom of the order does just fine. And last night, the Royals didn't play poorly until that 8th inning. And it was all pitching. It wasn't fielding there. The bullpen couldn't get out. And the reason I say it's more important, bullpen acquisitions are cheap. That is the cheapest area that you can acquire at a deadline or in June. You don't have to give up your number 1 and number 2 prospect for a bullpen arm. I mean, they got John Schreiber, who felt like up until last night was the best bullpen guy, and they got him for David Sandlin, who was middle of the pack in their prospects ranks. And the Royals have a bottom 5 farm system, at least overall rankings-wise right now. So you could go get 2 or 3 guys for this bullpen. 3 might be going a little bit too high. But to me, you could acquire some talent there and really make a good playoff push. I mean, they still have a playoff spot by 5.5 games, but you can't have too many more games like last night in this brutal 6-series stretch. This one comes from Toothy Tile and G Goose, saying he's not pissed after last night. That was an exciting 9th. It would have been crazy if Nelson had pulled it off. Nelson swinging the bat better would be awesome if he's snapping out of it. I know it's more of a statement, but totally agree. If Nelson Velasquez can keep channeling this power, I want him playing every single day. I don't think you need to mix and match. He's clearly found something back at the plate. And if I was there and I thought that ball was into the fountains. The way that the crowd reacted, the way that he reacted, I thought that, Jurickson Profar was just going to the warning track to make it seem like the ball wasn't going way over the fence. But man, that was truly I've never seen a rally like that. Down by 8 going into the inning, a position player just pitched in the top of the 9th, and the Royals still made it interesting. That's something they've done all year long, but hopefully one of these times they're going to pull off one of those miraculous comebacks. Steven asked, besides shipping MJ to Omaha, what moves do we need to make? Who is going to be the pitcher we add? Not sure who the pitcher they're going to be adding is, because they also may go a little bit small. They may not go after the Tanner Scotts or Mason Millers out there that are the big name bullpen arms, but they could acquire a few guys that make sense and can give them just more swing and miss, more velocity in the back pen, because I don't see there being a savior in Omaha. Walter Pennington, I would love to get a chance, but again, that's not the power I'm talking about. He certainly can be an upgrade over some guys up in that bullpen, but they need more power, more strength at the back end of that bullpen to generate the swing and miss and not give up 11 singles in one inning. Right now, though, I think an outlet to look to, I just said, Tanner Scott is kind of one of those higher priced guys. I'd at least try to kick the tires. I'd like to see what Miami's asking for, because he's somebody from the left side that can give you a lot of power. I think you've heard me say Justin Lawrence before in Colorado, not great numbers, but I think they're inflated a little bit because he pitches at Coors Field. He throws kind of sidearm, not submarine quite, not 3/4, and he goes 97, 98 with a funky angle. I think that would be worth something. You could look toward Chicago with Michael Kopech. The Royals ties, the Royals connections there would make some sense. So those are some guys of the top caliber that I think are going to be traded at the deadline. But the Royals may also go with guys that you're not really familiar with and try to do what they did last year with James McArthur, who I know right now isn't really being spoken highly of because of his last few outings. Ernie asks, why aren't they doing anything to address obvious outfield bullpen issues? Infuriating. Well, here's the thing. Nobody's really acting on trades right now. It's not like the Royals are just sitting there and not being aggressive. I mean, they were aggressive in the offseason. I think that it could come down to they're trying to work out deals, but it's not easy where it's like Road to the Show or a franchise in MLB where trades can happen instantaneously. Hey, I'm just going over to the trade screen. Let's make a trade. Oh, it's going to happen. These things can span like a month or two long. And I'm sure right now the Royals are trying to figure out guys that they want to acquire, but they're also not going to replace 8 guys in the bullpen. Okay. And for the outfield, yeah, I don't think it's great right now, but there's not really 3 affordable outfielders that are going to significantly improve it. And we can talk Joe Adell all we want. We can talk Jazz Chisholm. The asking price might be out of the Royals' range here. So they're hoping that some of these guys are going to be able to turn it around. I mean, Kyle Isbell, I think he's going to be the center fielder all year long. I don't think they are looking to upgrade that position. Now, the corner spots, Renfro, he can't be optioned. He's got another year under contract. And MJ, it comes down to, do you feel like you can demote him and it's going to work out? Is it a confidence thing? That's the only reason I see to demote him. You can fix stuff at the major league level with the swing, with the stance, with the hand placement. And I'm sure that, Alex Zumwalt and Keone Duran are trying to work on that with MJ Melendez. He's been better over the last 2 games, and you got to take everything with a grain of salt. But I think we're much more likely to see a bullpen acquisition first and not an outfield acquisition. But I wouldn't say that right now they got to rush into it. It's more so of we are reacting emotionally to what's happened the last 2 games. They have a stretch of 5 games in a row where they've not blown a game. You might feel a little bit differently. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we've got plenty more questions to get into. We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, want to give a shout out to the title sponsor today in Game Time. I just told you they are the place to go to when purchasing tickets. It can be for a sporting event. It can be for a comedy show, a concert, whatever you may be thinking. They're going to have the best possible deals. They can show you the hottest deals, the ones that are going the quickest, the cheapest deals, and you're never going to have to worry about where those tickets are coming from. They make everything so easy for you, whether you're going with 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, so on and so forth. I used it yesterday before going to the game. I was at work, wanted to go to the game, knew a couple people that wanted to go to the game, and I just went over to Game Time and bought those tickets and was done within 5 minutes. So strongly suggest, if you're thinking about going this afternoon, use Game Time. And here's what you need to do to give you a little bit more information. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. We also want to let you know about one of our new local sponsors here in PXG Golf. I got fitted for a driver. I've told you about this all week long. It was a fantastic experience. If you are looking to just get fitted for your short range game, your long range game, do so at PXG because they use this thing called the TrackMan, which is what the pros use. If you're not a golfer, I'm not a huge golfer, but it was so much fun. But if you are a golfer, you probably already know what the TrackMan is. And they're going to be able to figure out your swing speed, the ball velocity, how far the ball went, the spin rate on it, the launch angle. You've heard us say those baseball terms all the time. They can use it now with golf, and they use it on a golf simulator. It's a very fun 40 minutes, and they're going to have you all set up over at PXG Golf. So visit pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City at 7157 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals to schedule your fitting. We still have plenty more questions to get into, and we've got only about 15 or so minutes to do so. So let's go over to 402 Cons. Why is Walter Pennington still in Omaha? I do think the Royals look at Walter Pennington as bullpen help down the road. Hopefully it's in the month of June because I think that he's just dominating too much in Omaha where it makes too much sense. He's been the best pitcher in Omaha, in my opinion. I think he'd have an easier transition than any guy that they would be bringing up. I mean, Sam Long's been pretty good in the couple of outings that he's been up there. But if they bring up Walter Pennington, I think a lefty's got to go. I don't think you need 3 lefties in the bullpen because loogies, lefty specialists, they're not valid anymore because you have the 3-batter minimum in today's game. So whenever they decide Will Smith may not be the guy they want in there anymore, actually I said 3 lefties. That'd be 4 lefties. They brought Walter Pennington up because Angel Serpa, Sam Long, Will Smith, 4 lefties might just be too much in a bullpen. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Maybe it does make more sense, and the Royals could be evaluating that at this point in time. JC asks, how concerned are you with this recent slide? It's recency bias for sure, and especially after 8 straight wins, but damn, it's just like they are playing very sloppy baseball over these last 6 games. Absolutely. I don't think I am worried, but the sloppy baseball has been an eyesore, that's for sure, because this is a team that doesn't play sloppy baseball, or at least hasn't through the first 60 games. They've got an excellent infield, defensively that is. They've got an elite center fielder defensively. MJ Melendez has made strides in lefts, and Salvador Perez has made strides behind the plate. So the sloppy baseball, that's been infuriating for sure. I'm not overly concerned because, as we know in baseball and as it's tough to grasp at times, bad stretches happen like this. I mean, even the greatest teams out there, the Dodgers last week lost 5 in a row. Sky felt like it was falling probably to some Dodgers fans. Oh, they're not as good as we thought they'd be. It happens, though. In the same way you win 8 in a row and everything comes to you easily, it feels like winning a game right now is a little bit difficult because they've lost 5 of their last 6. And I would attribute a lot of that, not just to poor bullpen. It would be the sloppy play. They've made a lot of boneheaded plays in the field and from guys that don't make too many boneheaded plays. But overall, not overly concerned. Just a bad stretch right now. Tyler asks, who do we trade for to fix our bullpen, and when do you think Pennington gets the call? I would imagine the guys I just brought up for who they'd be looking for, but also guys kind of like James MacArthur last year. That would be more of the Royals' route. I believe J.J. Picollo in the pregame yesterday said we got to win some trades from between the margins, and that kind of means we got to win some trades where we're giving up a lottery ticket guy for a guy in AAA who we really think analytically is going to jump off the page. It may not be Mason Miller. It may not be Tanner Scott. It may not be Michael Kopech. And I think in June a trade will happen one way or another. But I would imagine they'll be a little bit more aggressive at the deadline, assuming they're still holding a playoff spot. And right now, they firmly hold a playoff spot. If you're worried about the Central, I think for your heart rate and your stress levels, just look at a playoff spot because as great as it is to win the division, getting into the playoffs is the goal. And right now, they hold a 5.5 game lead over Boston and Detroit for that playoff spot. And Boston and Detroit are playing each other. So for Pennington, I'd imagine he gets the call here in June. I'd maybe toward the end of June, just because he's been so dang good in Omaha. As for a trade, I could see one happening in June. But of those guys, maybe. But it also comes down to if those teams are willing to sell right now. Dave asks, could you envision a scenario where Lynch and Bubic become our best bullpen guys to at least get us through the season, or are we stuck with the guys we have? I don't see a scenario in which Lynch and Bubic are going to be the best bullpen guys. In the end, I still think it's going to be Serpa, Schreiber, and MacArthur, even though 2 of those guys aren't pitching well right now. You hope the other guys can just pick up the slack a little bit, that you don't have Chris Stratton imploding in the way that he does, Nick Anderson imploding like he did in Anaheim, Will Smith imploding like he did at the beginning of the year. Those 3 guys, even though 2 of them are slumping, I think they're going to be the best ones. But Chris Bubic and Daniel Lynch could absolutely provide some relief there. Alex asks, over under 2.5 bullpen arms the Royals should acquire. I'm going to say under. I don't think you need to go after 3 guys, and I don't see the Royals making 3 trades for bullpen arms. But I would imagine bare minimum 1. I think 2 would maybe be pushing it, depending how good that first guy would be. If they bring in a guy that is really locked in the back end, they may just feel like, hey, he's kind of changed around this bullpen. We don't need to make another trade. So I'm going to say under for that 2.5. It feels pretty easy because I don't see it being 3 bullpen arms being acquired by the Royals this year. What happened to MacArthur, Stratton, and Schreiber? They're so unreliable now. This one comes from Moody Rue. I think that's how you pronounce it. Apologize if I got it wrong. I just think those 3 guys, they're not striking out anybody. And when you don't strike out guys, I put this out on Twitter last night, you're going to have outings like that where you just get soft contact to death. And then sometimes you get hit really, really hard. When you can't put away guys 0-2, it's going to extend at bats, and guys are going to be able to just poke a ball to right field or poke a ball down the line. That's the problem. That they're struggling because they can't strike any guys out. And that probably isn't going to change because they just try to generate the soft contact. And when they get it done, they're going to have clean outings. But when they can't, and you're not positioned correctly, or the shift, it works against you, you're going to have times like last night. Maybe not to that severity where you give up 9 runs in an outing, but yeah, I think it always comes back to they don't generate enough swing and miss. Jamie asks, what are they going to do with this bullpen? I'd imagine still kind of stick with the guys that they have. They're going to hope they get back on track sooner rather than later because they can't afford to blow too many games like that in this stretch because you don't want to blow a 5.5 game playoff cushion. You don't want to do that right now. But I would imagine they're going to try to upgrade at that spot either later on this month or into the month of July. This one comes from Gurmy. Jake Eisenberg could not be happier for every hit the Padres got. I understand he's a TV announcer, but it really pissed me off how Rex and Jake were talking so much about how the Padres kept hitting on us. Well, I was at the game, so I didn't chance to hear the broadcast. Jake is fantastic at his job. I can't speak to if he was happy. I don't think he was happy. It was probably more so of, wow, this is This never stopped. These are great. They were great at bats. They were just poking the ball exactly where they needed to be. And I think it was more so the frustration boiling it over as the fan of I don't want to hear how great the other team is doing when my team is imploding. That I've been in that spot numerous times before. But again, I can't really speak to that because I wasn't listening to the broadcast last night. I was at the game. Okay, before we move on to our final round of questions, I want to give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel, program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, we'll wrap up our Mailbag Saturday next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. For our last shout out, we're going to go to SupplyHouse. And with SupplyHouse, get supplies from the site that makes for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Well, we got to wrap up the show really quickly here with a lot more questions to get into. So I apologize if I spent a little bit too much time on the earlier questions and not as much on the questions for some of these people in the back half of this show. This one comes from Walker Season. What will this team need to do to swing the momentum back in their way before a barrage of difficult games come their way? Well, they're already in the middle of the difficult games. They're going to get the Padres, the Guardians, the Mariners, the Yankees, and the Dodgers. So there's going to be no let up. But kind of shifting momentum is random in baseball. You win a game or two in a row and you start to feel like, hey, we can beat just about anybody. But when you're struggling, you might press a little bit. I'm very curious how they're going to respond today, kind of the same way I was curious after they blew that game against Milwaukee, the Willie Adames go-ahead home run in the ninth, and they came back and won the next day. Very curious what it's going to look like today, how flat they are, how upbeat they are, and see if Alec Marsh can get the job done. But momentum's random in baseball. How they get the momentum back on their side, you win a game, you crush somebody, and you kind of feel like things are going back in your favor. Aiden asks, how many strikeout relievers do you think are going to be available? Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of teams out there that have power guys, but in terms of value and in terms of affordability, those strikeout guys are going to have a higher price on them. But I would put it, anywhere from 10 to 15 elite guys could be out there, where even some that aren't popular household names, they've got the swing and miss stuff, or at least have the power the Royals are going to be looking for. So I think I would say a healthy amount, but it all comes down to affordability at that point. RB Carras need a pen, arm, and bat. Need a pen, arm, and bat. Plenty of teams are potentially one-stop shopping for JJ. Miami, Oakland, White Sox, Nationals, who's the best match? Well, the Nationals is a good one because they have two guys that I think would make sense. They have Hunter Harvey. I don't know how Hunter Harvey's looked this year. He actually might be hurt. I know in the offseason I did a little bit of a deep dive on that. And then Kyle Finnegan's their closer if they wanted to really go for a guy with back-end closing experience. With the White Sox, you're talking about Michael Kopech. When you go with Oakland, Oakland's got a great back-end bullpen, but I think Mason Miller is just going to be too high of a price, and they may not trade him when it's all said and done. But there are guys that like it in that bullpen as well. The Royals were familiar with that in that 3-game series in Kansas City a few weeks ago. But yeah, I think those are all the teams you're going to be looking at. Tanner Scott in Miami. There are guys to like there. It's a matter of can the Royals meet that asking price. KC Superiority asks, how would you feel about adding Jorge Lopez to try to help out the struggling bullpen? He was fine in New York. I didn't think that anything really stuck out. He kind of feels like a lot of what the Royals have right now. And to me, that's just not good enough. That doesn't really move the needle for me. They could kick the tires, though. As we said, he was DFA'd, so you can work out a trade and if he clears waivers, maybe at that point you could, because he's not going back to the Mets. I think he'd become a free agent at that point. So you could work out something there. But I just don't know if it moves the needle much for me. Chris asked, what should be more of a priority, improving the bullpen or the outfield? I feel like the outfield is seeing some improvement with the bat lately, but the lack of swing and miss arm is becoming more and more evident. It's bullpen for me. I've touched on this a little bit in today's show. I just think the bullpen needs a lot more help, and it's far more affordable than getting an everyday bat for the outfield. Ben asked, what do we do with the bullpen when we make a trade? Who gets the boot? If they make a trade, I'd imagine somebody like Will Klein right now, who was just brought up, would get the boot. If they wanted to make a permanent move where somebody's not coming back up, they could always DFA a Nick Anderson or a Will Smith, or one of those guys that they just don't view as being a valuable piece long term. But also they could hold those guys in much higher regard than some of the fan base does right now. Charles asks, obviously talks about acquiring an outfield bat and a bullpen arm, but do you think we can make trades for both those needs? And do you think one solution will have to come from within the organization? They are going to have some help within the farm system. I think they're going to need Walter Pennington to be really, really good. They're going to need John McMillan to come back at one point. They're going to need Carlos Hernandez's help. They need guys from Omaha to give them some stability in the bullpen. But I could see them making a minor trade for the outfield. If they can't reach that, then maybe they go for two guys in the bullpen. But I just think bullpen is far more of a need right now, even with a struggling outfield. You lock down that bullpen, you're going to be able to win a lot of those nice starts from your pitching staff, which has been reliable through 60 games. Devin asks here, how much of an impact do you see Chris Bubich making when he comes back up? I'd see him in a minor role. I'd see him in long relief probably. Hopefully we can see him sooner rather than later, because it's such a great story and he was so good for the couple starts he made last year. But I wouldn't expect him in any sort of high leverage role. Eli has two questions. Who's your dream acquisition at the deadline? For me, it's probably going to be Jurickson Profar, since I'm confident JJ will improve the bullpen. Yeah, I just don't see the Padres being sellers. We had our preview crossover episode yesterday. Profar has been one of their better hitters. They're going to still try to go for a playoff spot. So Profar feels off the table. I'd say bullpen arm, I'm going to go Tanner Scott out of Miami. He also asks, is it possible that Bubich either helps the bullpen following 3 uppers or trade chip to a team that needs a starter and we get a bullpen arm or two in return? I don't think Chris Bubich has much trade value coming off Tommy John. So if anything, he'll be bullpen reinforcement for the Royals. But as I just said, I think it'd be in a lower leverage situation. Carl asks, we can't ask starters to go 6+ every single night. It's not possible. We can ask the lineup to give Penn a 5 to 6 run cushion every night. Pressure makes diamonds, or it makes you fold. Right now, the pen is folding. Who's going to step up? Omaha, trade, fix it now. Maybe Walter Pennington in Omaha, and maybe a trade. I know it's kind of been the theme of this show, but that might be the biggest help to look, and the most affordable help going down to Omaha. And he also said Nick Lofton was our best reliever. Also, yeah, shout out to Nick Lofton throwing a scoreless inning and generating a double play in the 9th inning. Wish he would have gotten the win. I wonder if he had advocated to go in, or if the Royals just made that decision. But yeah, Carl is saying fix this bullpen. I think you're feeling the way a lot of people do in the comments for this Mailbag Saturday. This next one comes from Connor. What are your thoughts on Renfroe improving at the plate? Do you think he will continue to get better as the season progresses? He might get a little bit better. I don't know if he's ever going to hit over 200, really. He'd really have to catch fire, and I just don't know if I see that. I'd imagine the Royals are just going to keep not platooning him, but just not playing him every single day. And if he does catch fire, hopefully the Royals can win a couple games out of it. Taco asks, is it time to add Trevor Bauer? Probably not. Until I see more smoke around the Trevor Bauer deal, I don't see a move being made from anybody in Major League Baseball. But if something happens, I would be more than happy to revisit that situation. And then 643 Royals asked to close out the show, just going to give you a break from answering bullpen questions. If you could put any 2 players from 2015 onto this team, who would they be and why? Simple. Kelvin Herrera, Wade Davis, and that'll close out Mailbag Saturday. You solidify this bullpen, this team's going to easily have a playoff spot come July and August. But yeah, I'm going to go with Davis and Kelvin Herrera. Well, that's going to do it for our special Mailbag Saturday edition on Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. No show tomorrow. We'll be back to complete normalcy on Monday, recapping this entire Padres series. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.